BioShock. One of the GOATs, right up there with Skyrim. I remember before it came out, it was featured in Game Informer. I know, a relic of an ancient past. And they were talking about the game mechanics, of course, but also the philosophy behind the game. This was my first introduction to philosophy, and it wouldn't pay off for more than a decade, but I always remembered that BioShock, in addition to being a solid game, had a message it was trying to teach the player. The message? Ayn Rand's Objectivism and everything that resembles it leads to suffering and chaos. This is the start of the video, and so it's just the surface level of the critique. And much like Rapture, it goes down pretty deep. Welcome to Game Philosophy, and today we're going to cover BioShock's critique of Ayn Rand and evaluate whether it succeeds or fails in its critique. This is part 2 of my BioShock series, and if you're unfamiliar with Ayn Rand, I strongly suggest you go watch my Rand rant in part 1. And to start us off, let's do a quick recap of Objectivism. Objectivism is the philosophy of Ayn Rand, and its stated ethos is that people should act in their own rational self-interest. This is based on a lot of her work. The Fountainhead in particular is an encapsulation of this idea, where selfish intentions of each person are the fountainhead of progress and creativity and meaning. Your own desires trump everything else, bar none. And if you let other people into your life, it's because it's in your own self-interest to do so. And a big tenet of this philosophy is that there is no interference from the government, religion, or any compulsory body. Each person should be free to pursue whatever their interests are in the manner in which they do so, without anybody telling them otherwise. And not only that, but you are entitled to everything that you do and everything that you have because you are special and you deserve it. Andrew Ryan, the stand-in for Ayn Rand, sums this up really nicely in your bathysphere ride to Rapture.
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose Rapture.
And for those of you who may not have played BioShock, Rapture is on the bottom of the ocean and it's an objectivist paradise. You're free to do whatever you want in art, business, medicine, whatever. There are no constraints. The only rule is that there are no rules, and slight little corollary, don't piss off Andrew Ryan. But apart from that, you can come on down, be amongst your excellent peers, and do whatever you want because no one should tell you what to do. Everything's all well and good until it isn't. Cronies of Andrew Ryan start gaining more and more power, mob rule eventually ensues, and utopia quickly turns into pandemonium. And not only is it mob rule, but it's mob rule at the hands of people who have been spliced out of their minds using Adam, which gives you superpowers and a little bit of insanity. All in all, this is a perfect ticking time bomb for disaster to strike. Amidst all this, enter you, the player. You don't know anything about what's going on except you're taking a really fun ride under the sea and you just see someone getting their guts ripped out. This is pretty standard fare now down in Rapture. And BioShock right out the gate is leading off showing you how dangerous this selfish ideology is. And it's not just the unfettered business practices and lack of regulation that's problematic, but the whole premise of Adam, this super-powered drug that gives you the power to shoot lightning out of your hands or have telekinesis, is all brought about because there are no controls on human experimentation, and the people leading the research are ex-concentration camp scientists.
At the German prison camp, they put me to work on genetic experiments on other prisoners. They call me das Wunderkind, the Wonder Child. Germans. All they can talk about is blue eyes and the shape of forehead. All I care about is why is this one born strong and that one weak? This one smart, that one stupid. All that killing. You think the Germans could have been interested in something useful?
So you have war criminals pursuing not war crimes down in the bottom of the ocean, all under the guise of progress. And BioShock gives you personified examples of medicine gone awry, business gone rampant, music gone awry, if that's even a thing. I don't know how getting really crazy with music turns into Rapture, but you strap a bunch of explosives to a piano and make someone play a really hard piece of music. I guess that's the worst that can happen. I don't know. Or it's just a reenactment of West Side Story, but instead of snapping, they have Tommy guns. I digress. You get shown case studies of all the different ways that self-interest and lack of any sort of protections or ethics can go wrong really bad, really fast. And it culminates with Andrew Ryan. Ryan is the man behind Rapture, and he's a hypocrite in idealist's clothing. He has so many highbrow notions of individual responsibility, individual accountability, individual achievement, and he's willing to put everybody else on the pedestal of the great chain and progress except himself. Whenever he has competition, he goes about with violence, banning smuggling, eliminating the competition, and it turns out that the great chain really only pools for Andrew Ryan.
Something must be done about Fontaine. While I was buying buildings and fish futures, he was cornering the market on genotypes and nucleotide sequences. Rapture is transforming before my eyes. The great chain is pulling away from me. Perhaps it's time to give it a tug.
And then to contrast Ryan, you have Fontaine. This is Ryan's foil. He's a darker reflection of Ryan. Ryan writes him off as some thug and criminal, but he's just doing what Ryan did, and maybe even better, which leads to problems and eventually Fontaine taking over the whole city.
Don't forget to say hi to Ryan for me.
And again, it's not that there's just rampant corruption because there aren't any controls on anything. You have Adam, too, playing a major role in all of this. Everyone has become a splicer, someone who's been so messed up by Adam that they've gone insane, with the exception of Ryan, Tenenbaum, and Fontaine, at least until the ending. BioShock adds another layer to this because it's not just the fact that unfettered capitalism or objectivism leads to this hellhole at the bottom of the ocean. It's that you have these corrupt, angry, egotistical people who now have access to Adam, which makes them go insane and amplifies all of those negative attributes. Steinman and Cohen, some of Ryan's cronies, are corrupt and powerful people, but how much did Adam contribute to their insanity and bloodlust? Steinman's descent into madness is actually really well documented in a series of voicemails he leaves for himself. I still don't understand this in video games, all these logs, but whatever. If you're crazy enough to Picasso someone's face in real life, you're crazy enough to record every single one of your thoughts on a little voice recorder and leave it all over the place. But you can see his descent into madness as first he's striving for perfection, and then he starts seeing visions of a goddess who tells him that symmetry is out and asymmetry is true perfection. And then you hear instances of him going above and beyond the call of duty in a surgery to make some last-minute changes that the patient didn't consent to.
4-0 silk and down.
The nose looks terrific, Dr. Steinman. Doctor?
You know, looking at it now, I didn't realize how much your face sags. Scalpel?
Excuse me?
Scalpel.
Doctor, she's not booked for a facelift.
Let's just come in here and...
Doctor, stop cutting. Doctor, stop cutting. Get me the chief of surgery. Get me the chief of surgery now!
And ultimately, it leads to your confrontation with him, where he has people crucified up above as standards of non-beauty. With Cohen, it's less intense. He's just part of a mob that's in a fight with another mob with an opera singer. He's a piano guy, so it's just pianos versus opera, I guess. But he still ends up having a violent tendency that you assist with by taking photos of all of his inept proteges who ran off and who are all spliced out of their mind as well, culminating with you taking him out. No crime goes unpunished in Rapture. Were they good people before they got into all the Adam and the splicing? And really, at the bottom of it, Rapture collapsed because of Adam and everyone going insane, right? Wrong. Even without Adam, Rapture was on a downward trend. It was a death by 1,000 cuts, or it was a death by 999 cuts, and then a big stab through the heart. In the grand scheme of things, Adam is a relatively new technology in Rapture, but even predating Adam, you had competition that wasn't fair, but the smuggling rings, the corruption, that was all there before Adam was introduced. Adam only exacerbated the problem that was pre-existing with the fundamental assumption of the society, that you don't need any control over anything because control is evil. Unfettered selfishness is the problem, and the free market can't do anything to prevent bad actors from taking over. Just like Ryan, he's a prime example. He starts out as an attractive idealist, but his true colors are revealed the moment his control begins slipping.
Free will is the cornerstone of this city. The thought of sacrificing it is abhorrent. However, we are indeed in a time of war. If Atlas and his bandits have their way, will they not turn us into slaves? And what will become of free will then? Desperate times call for desperate measures.
And BioShock really highlights the fact that in this world, utopia is only for the elites. You still need the suffering and exploitation of others to live your dream at the bottom of the ocean. Plumbers in particular are very important, but you don't see any plumbers going around going crazy because they have a plumbing cartel or something like that.
We all come down here. Figured we all be part of Ryan's great chain. Turns out Ryan's chain is made of gold, and ours are the sort with the big iron ball around your ankle.
And I think, for the sake of BioShock's critique, the atom wasn't really necessary. It's pretty much a callback to System Shock with the powers in there. Plus, you gotta make the game fun, and a first-person shooter at the bottom of the ocean really isn't as fun as a first-person shooter where you can shoot bees out of your hands. So I understand why it's added. It's a gameplay element, but they've also managed to fit it into the story by making it make everything that much worse. Now for my critique of BioShock's critique. And first I want to start off with where BioShock goes right. And this is a harsh mirror to the reality that we face. Yes, on the surface it is a critique of objectivism, but objectivism and laissez-faire capitalism walk hand in hand. And it really shines a light on the fact that the first world enjoys its luxuries at the expense of others. What I mean by this is that we have just outsourced a lot of the suffering and the negative stuff to give us a better quality of life. Even the most egalitarian of countries partake in this, like the Swedes or the Norwegians, whatever, everyone in that section who everyone says is like the perfect society. Countries have improved the lives of their citizens by outsourcing atrocities. The whole concept of this is a thing called not in my backyard. Not in my backyard, or NIMBY, is a phrase often used whenever people want a power plant, but not in my backyard. I want a prison, but not in my backyard. Smartphones and electric cars are good examples of not in my backyard mentality, because these are both seemingly good items. Smartphones give access not to just communication, but information. You have the entire internet at your fingertips. Electric vehicles, they're supposedly good for the environment because they're reducing coal use, and even if they are being charged up by coal plants, you still have the fact that you're not burning as much fossil fuels, presumably, right? These good things, however, come at the expense of the less fortunate. Factories in China where smartphones are assembled have suicide nets outside of them because the working conditions are so bad. Electric vehicles, anything with a lithium-ion battery or a rechargeable battery, is reliant upon cobalt. Where do we get cobalt? Slavery. African mines that are supposed to be humane and stuff, there's just child slavery, human slavery. We have blood cobalt in the same way we have blood diamonds. It just hasn't been exposed so hard as of yet. You have these atrocities that are just not in my backyard that give us these seemingly great items. And it just highlights the fact that no one exists in isolation. It's not just that we've outsourced our jobs, but our pollution and suffering. And in honest terms, when we look at the atrocities that happen in these developing countries at the behest of first world countries, what's the difference today between a child slave in a cobalt mine and a peasant in the Dark Ages? Both are exploited and will die too young to better serve the elites. In BioShock, this is referenced too, because no matter how much Ryan wants to have his isolated utopia at the bottom of the ocean, at some level, smuggling is still necessary to ensure the needs of everybody are met. It's not sufficient on its own, except to make way for the elites to have a really luxurious lifestyle. And so whenever you have this idea of the atrocities of capitalism, we're seeing this day to day, where the push for greater margins, less costs, all lead to the suffering and exploitation of others, while the rich get to live in luxury and get to have a really carefree life, just like in Rapture, until the atom starts flowing. And it also shows the fact that only a select few people can enjoy the luxuries of the work of others. Even in Utopia of Rapture, you can't just have every person be this savant that's amazing at everything that you do. You still need to have the lay person that you can exploit to make sure you can live in your frivolous excess. And this further leads into the ultimate failing of capitalism. The end goal of capitalism isn't a flat bar of equality. It's the consolidation of capital into one point. It's a tall and narrow pyramid. It can't be fair by design. You can only have so many elites. It's not baked into the system for everybody to be a winner. And now, why am I getting all caught up in capitalism? Isn't this about objectivism? Well, Ayn Rand herself makes the connection. In the introduction to the Fountainhead, she quotes a presentation she gave at the Lewis and Clark College in 1963. She says, "Since my purpose is the presentation of an ideal man, I had to define and present the conditions which make him possible and which his existence requires. Since man acts among and deals with other men, I had to present the kind of social system that makes it possible for the ideal men to exist and to function. A free, productive, rational system which demands and rewards the best in every man and which is obviously laissez-faire capitalism." So capitalism has been inextricably tied to objectivism by Ayn Rand's own admission. It's the only system possible to create the circumstances in which an objectivist society can manifest, and an objectivist person could manifest. Now, this is everything BioShock gets right. What about what it gets wrong? Well, I wouldn't have a philosophy degree if I didn't disagree about something. Where BioShock goes wrong is that, first of all, it strawmans objectivism. And if I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt, it's just a game. And not in a disparaging sense, but they don't have a lot of time and space to really flesh this out. This is just your first experience with the idea. So they can't get too deep. It has to have mass appeal. I get that. The critical side of me says that this is a surface level critique, because if you were to steel man objectivism, your critique wouldn't be as sensational. You wouldn't be able to be so drastic in the claims you're making against objectivism and capitalism. My main thesis behind this is that selfishness is not a feature exclusive to capitalism or objectivism. Let me start building this out by talking about game theory. We are, after all, playing video games. So, rhetorical question: what is the best way to win a game? It's not keep your opponent from scoring points while trying to score as many points as you can. No. The best way to win a game is to ensure that your opponent follows as many rules as possible while you break as many rules as possible. This is known as cheating. And the best cheaters never get caught, and they are everywhere. It's in every sport or contest. Lance Armstrong, I know whatever you want to think about him, however many other people are cheating, but he was biological and or mechanical doping, allegedly, whatever. You have that going on in the Tour de France. The guy who had a butt plug vibrating to tell him what moves to make in chess. Tanya Harding, and beating up her competition with the steel pipe. The cheating is done both on and off the field of battle. And this is cheating just to have a title or a shiny trophy, yellow jersey, fame. So we know cheating exists in this relatively small scale. Why wouldn't people then also want to cheat for true power? Every economic and political system has people trying to play outside the rules to gain an advantage. And this isn't a fault of each system, it's a fault of human nature. This isn't saying it works but it hasn't been done right, i.e. communism, and it's also not a boomer cop-out of it's a terrible system but it's the best one we got. This is just an acknowledgement that I think gets passed over, that when you're dealing with humans, you always have people looking to gain an advantage. It doesn't matter what the system that they're playing in is. It doesn't matter if it's a game or politics, you're gonna have cheaters. So rather than attack any one political or economic system, the task should be to figure out which combination of elements in each system can meld together to limit suffering and exploitation, because suffering and exploitation are also not exclusive to capitalism and objectivism. It's everywhere. Again, no one exists in isolation. Unless you're in some commune of 5 people who live in squalor with subsistence farming, you're gonna end up exploiting someone, knowingly or unknowingly. If you were to take Rapture and insert any other thing besides laissez-faire capitalism and objectivism, you would end up with the same outcome where lying and cheating gets people to the top, just like Fontaine uses cheating and manipulation to get to the top, as evidenced by how he played you. And if you want to jump up and rush to the defense of any other political and economic system, I would remind you of the gulags and the millions of people who starved under communist Russia. I would remind you of all the senseless deaths as part of the Maoist revolution in China. No one gets out of this clean. No political system is a utopia. There are issues that have to be ironed out at the expense of the less fortunate. We know that without any control, there's chaos like Rapture, and also, if there is control, you have chaos like Rapture, but in real life, like with communist Russia and communist China. And I'd be remiss not to mention the rampant corruption of lobbyist democracy. So, what do? Who watches the Watchmen? You absolutely need somebody or some group to police others, but how do you make sure a governing body doesn't get infiltrated by bad actors like the bad actors that are infiltrating the economic systems? If you make a governing body, how do you make sure that it doesn't get infiltrated by bad actors as well? You reach this infinite recurse that just becomes unsolvable, and this is the question I can't answer. What I do know is that it is unhelpful and unproductive to just point your finger and say, ha, I have the smoking gun because X went wrong under this system, that means Y is better. And I don't want anybody listening to this thinking that because I'm saying that, oh, capitalism isn't all that bad, that I'm saying, oh, communism is garbage. That's akin to a false dichotomy where just because I criticize one thing doesn't mean I endorse the other. I want to find a new system that can mitigate suffering and exploitation, but due to, again, having to deal with humans, I honestly don't think that's possible. And so, just like an asymptote, we need to develop systems and iterate on systems that get us closer and closer and closer to this promised utopia that I just don't think can ever exist. And to give objectivism its due, in a world where corruption runs rampant, wouldn't you want to take your interests into your own hands? Why would you want a corrupt group to determine what you can do rather than you? And as much as I ragged on her in my previous video, I want to be fair to Ayn Rand because it's not that she had some abstract reason to not like communism and develop this ideology of hers. She suffered firsthand at the result of the communist regime. And like the saying goes, the grass is always greener on the other side. When you know and have experienced the alternative, anything sounds better. And just the same with people who have grown up under capitalism and see what's gone wrong here and they long for something different. It's a natural response. And what I want is a more even-handed critique of objectivism without just pointing fingers and saying, oh, this would only have happened under laissez-faire capitalism or objectivism. My final say is that Rapture would happen regardless because you're dealing with people, and the people who rise to the top are the ones who are unwilling to play by the rules. And that is what you have to combat, not the system, because it can generate in any system. And now it's time for the obligatory like and subscribe BS. Part 3 is going to be coming out where I go into eugenics and Adam. And as a scientist and a philosopher, this is going to be a really interesting one for me. Get ready for that next month, and thanks for sticking around and watching this long.